Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast, presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's Josh with MitsuTimes. Today our guest is Casey Pirro, the owner and creator of the Vegabishi, the 4G63 swapped Chevy Vega. Hopefully you've seen it on the internet or at the shootout. How's it going, Casey? How are you?
It is going lovely.
Good.
Doing all right. Can't complain.
I love these late night podcasts. I feel like I have a little bit more energy than during the day.
I don't know. My energy is all over the place. I had a bang earlier today.
There you go.
At the gym. So, I should be awake for this. So we'll see.
If we fall asleep halfway through, then at least you know why.
Well, I'm down in the garage, actually, so that way it's peaceful, quiet, and I'm just kind of walking around in circles, aimlessly staring at the car while we're doing this. So
you draw inspiration.
Maybe I'll pick up a drill or a wrench in the middle of it.
There you go. All right, so tell us about the Vegabishi as it sits right now.
So as it sits right now, it is still in active build race car creation. It's not in retirement status. I don't get out much with it, but it is still something that I'm currently in the midst of making better.
What's the current setup on it?
Current setup right now, still a bone stock 2-liter, just with ARP studs and a reused MLS gasket with a bunch of copper spray.
Beautiful.
The turbo is an HTA 68 right now that Robert Young hooked me up with in Force Performance. Made it to a TH350 turbo that was fully built for the V8 that I originally had in the car from years ago, to a Ford 9-inch, and that's really it. I mean, it's very, very simple.
So you built a V8 for it. What motivated you to put a 4G63 in it instead?
So I've had this car actually since I was 15. It was a father-son project. It was my first car. We bought it with a 267 V8 in it. Learned how to drive on that, and then that was with my learner's permit, and then that morphed into, over the winter that year, when I got my license, we pulled that motor out. We put a 413 small block in it, pulled that out after that blew up. That's a whole other side story. Then it got a 355 V8 roller motor. Came home from college, raced it 2 times with that motor. Couldn't afford the gas. I was in too much debt. Then the car sat for roughly 5 years. My father passed away in that time period. I could not sell the car. Couldn't get anything out of it for what I had invested into it at that point.
Oh, yeah.
And I was, since college, into the whole Mitsubishi 4G63 thing. Had a 92 TSI while I was in college, and I kept going to the shootout from 2007 onward. And every year we went out, me and my buddies were just like, man, we should probably do something with the Vega. And that's how it came to be.
That's how it started.
Yeah, that's how it started.
So when you was 15, what was the Vega like when you bought it?
When I bought it, when I was 15, the green paint that was on the car was actually glossy. It had like a little metal flake to it. It did not have the patina that it has now. The patina just literally came from the years of neglect of sitting outside, just exposed to the elements. Sometimes with a cover on it, and those really, really chintzy car covers do more harm than good in the element. Wind up just ruining the paint. And the green paint that was on the car was not professionally done. It looked like somebody may have sprayed it in their garage at some point with, a Harbor Freight gun, whatever. And,
right.
if you washed it and waxed it right away. It looked good, and then within a few days, it just started to look like crap again.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was never a 100-point car, but it outside of the paint, I mean, back then it still had a full interior. It still has that now. The seats weren't as ripped up as they are. The dashboard was all original back then when I first got the car. Now, of course, it's all hacked up. That's part of the 2022 idea, was to put a Mitsubishi gauge cluster in it now, which I'm still sorting out, mounting and wiring. But I at least have a working speedometer, so that's a first.
That's a plus, yeah. So obviously, when you first got the Vega, you didn't have the 4G60 idea right away.
Oh no. The idea back then when I first got the car was, hey, I'm gonna have something that's lightweight and fast, and my dad was a main push behind the car. We were searching for my first car, and it was actually almost going to be a Mustang, and that deal fell through. And then we looked the weekend that I bought the Vega. It was actually a Friday. We went to look at a '58 Impala, and we just didn't like some of the things that we saw with the car. And one of my dad's friends down in Harrisburg called us up, and he goes, "Oh, hey, I just traded this and bought this and sold that." And he goes, "And you're never gonna believe what I got." My dad's like, "Oh yeah, what'd you pick up?" He's like, "I got this little V8 swapped Vega wagon." My dad's jaw hit the floor, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't even know what I'm gonna do with it." He's like, "It's fun, but it's slow. It's got a tired V8 in it. It burns oil. It smokes. It's this. It's that." And my dad's just like, "Well, I loved Vegas, and we're going to come down this weekend and, visit you anyway, so I'll see it. And, hey, Casey's looking for a car. Maybe he'll be interested in it." And literally, we drove down there, and within 5 minutes of me seeing the car, I was like, I need to have it.
Yeah. It's just one of those things, love at first sight.
Yes, it was. And believe it or not, I was never really a fan of the Vega coupes. A couple of my dad's friends had them, and I was like, they're all right. And when I saw the wagon, I was just like, I gotta have it. Yeah. And bought the car when I was 15 for $2,200. When I was in my first half of college, I was driving an '88 Suburban, and the heater core popped. And I regret getting rid of that truck. But again, another side story.
So what was involved in putting this 4G63 in where a V8 once lived?
So the Vega was originally a 4-cylinder car. This one in particular, there was the Iron Duke, and what was the other size motor? The Cosworth twin cam Vegas. This one was a 2.3 liter, original factory, nothing special wagon with an automatic in it. And to put a V8 into these, you have to take a sledgehammer to the firewall and the trans tunnel to massage it. So when we were getting to the point of putting the 4G63 into this, we were like, all right, well, everything's already clearanced, so how bad could it be? We left the transmission exactly where it was from when the V8 was in it. We didn't want to shift that back or forth. And we go to lower the motor in, and we're like, oh, okay, the thermostat housing smacks the firewall.
Yeah.
And I was, okay, well, I can get a forward-facing one, or not forward-facing, but God, what's the correct term? I don't even remember anymore.
The one where the thermostat or the freeze plug used to live?
Yes, the one on the front where the timing belt is. You punch that out, and they make the adapter. And
right.
Plug up passageways in the block and open up other ones. And I was like, I don't want to go through all that. Like, this is supposed to be an extremely tight budget build. So I left the thermostat housing on the back of the block, and the crank angle sensor also just about touches the firewall wiper cowl area. But anyway, to get back to the specifics, I literally had to knock out the firewall another 6.5 inches to make the clearance for the housing and the rad hose, the crank angle sensor. What else needed to be clearanced in the back? The adapter plate for the bell housing was a little too close to the trans tunnel area, and I had to hammer that back, which wound up bending the area where the gas pedal bolts into the firewall, so that had to get tweaked and bent. And it actually even uses a Mitsubishi non-cruise control throttle cable.
Really?
Yes.
4G63 swapping like a regular Mitsubishi rear-wheel drive vehicle like a Mighty Max or a Starion, you got to do the same thing, but I just assumed that there would have been more room in the Vega, but I guess not.
I really, really thought that there would have been more room as well. When we lowered the motor in, we were shocked at what clearances we had to work with. We really thought we were going to have more. However, we got very, very fortunate that where the motor sits is where it needs to be. If anything was a half an inch one way or another, forward, back, left, right, this motor would not have sat in this car with the budget that I had to work with at the time. It would have required a whole lot more work. The steering shaft is about a 1/16 of an inch away from the corner of the intake manifold. The turbo and manifold literally sit in between the openings for the control arm on the passenger side. The steering linkage is within not even a half inch of my oil filter housing, and everybody's like, all right, well, if you're going rear wheel drive, run the forward facing oil filter housing. That actually would have made it worse on this one.
Wow.
I got lucky.
That's amazing, because when I've seen the car in person now, and I feel like it seems like there's more room, but it sounds like there's not. So that's amazing.
No, I was very, very, very lucky with how things worked out on this.
So obviously you have the FP68 HTA in it now. I know you had Evo 316G at some point. Have you had any other 4G63 setups in it?
No. When the car was first getting built, I originally purchased a journal bearing 6262 for the car.
Oh, wow.
But before it ever even turned over, before the motor was ever in it, like, I had this thing in my head where I just wanted the 6262. And Miles Henry actually was the one that I bought it from. He's fairly well known in the community.
Yeah.
And I had all hopes and dreams of putting it on the car. And then as I slowly acquired parts for the car and I was putting it all together, I was just like, this is never going to work. Like, I don't have the clearances. And if I do put this on the car, it's going to run probably 1350s at like 135 at the back. And it was never going to get up on the converter. I refused to use nitrous on this thing. And not only all of that, but just to make the turbo fit in the car, I would have needed a custom manifold.
Yeah.
And I don't have the $1,200 or $1,300 at that point to do it. So, needless to say, I sold that turbo and actually at one point went out and bought a automatic all-wheel drive second gen that had a bunch of performance parts on it, and I mixed and matched parts that I had acquired and spares to get the Evo 3 off of that car for the Vega.
That's pretty awesome.
Yes, and then 2000. Well, what year was that? That was 2019, or no? Yeah, it was the very, very beginning of 2020. I was in the middle of my honeymoon when me and my wife, we had a few minutes of spare time while we were on the cruise ship, and we're sitting there scrolling through Facebook, just catching up with the rest of the world, and I got a message from Robert Young, and he's like, hey, I really like the Vega, let's talk about it. And I was like, okay. And he's like, I saw your comment on one of the posts, and I forget the exact wording on it. I think he posted up something random saying, hey, what's your dream turbo from us? And everybody's like listing the biggest things he had available.
Yeah.
And here's just me. I was just like, ever since the HTA 68 came out, like, I thought it was just the coolest thing. And I just never was able to experience one, and it's on my dream list of things I'd love to buy. And he messaged me, he's just like, let's talk. And I was like, okay. So that's how I wound up with that.
Nice. Is it one of those things where when you unbox it, you just kind of want to put it on the like on mantle?
That turbo, after I unboxed it, literally sat on my kitchen table for about a month. And we ate dinner, and I stared at it every night. So
I can definitely understand. The first time, I bought FP Black, and when it came in the mail and I opened it, I don't know, something about I just wanted to put it under glass and just look at it every day.
Oh yeah, no, I literally almost wanted to go out of the motorcycle just to like stare at the first one.
Yeah, definitely.
No, it was a work of art, and actually, since I put the HTA on the car, we've had we've struggled with so many weird little issues. Most of them are self-inflicted, so I haven't even been able to get really good, solid data to know that it's going to work, which I feel really, really bad about. But this year, they're starting to turn around, and I'm hopeful we're finally going to hit some numbers with it.
So is there any part of the Vega that is still on your car from the original Vega? I mean, other than the body, obviously.
Well, actually now, the front clip on the car is not even original. That's all a fiberglass piece that I put on the car now. But yeah, the original part of the car, it still has a factory gas tank, sending unit, factory glass, factory seats, door panels, steering column, front brakes front brakes are almost original. They are off of a Monza, the bigger version. The Monza's got bigger brakes in Monza came out in 77. Yeah, this has 77 Monza brakes. It has 76 Pontiac Sunbird springs with one coil cut out of them. But it's all H body from that era, a family of GM vehicles where they were doing this whole unibody thing. That's really all that's left. Everything else has just been chopped up, hacked out, deleted.
So do you just have like a Walbro in tank then on that original gas tank?
I have cut apart so the original sending unit on these cars, I think they started it in 74, actually did have an electric fuel pump for the carburetor. That I cut apart and manipulated with a bulkhead fitting on it now, and it no longer has a 255 pump in it. I just took that out a few weeks ago, and it now has a 425 pump in it.
Okay.
Reason being, last year's shootout, when we were trying to diagnose some issues with stall up on pump gas, everybody's just like, oh, throw it on ethanol. Ethanol will give you the boost you need to get it up over the hump, and it'll make more jam. I was just like, you know what? I'm tired of everybody yelling at me about it, and this is either going to work or I'm going to say I told you so.
Yeah.
So I threw a tank of E85 in it, and we jammed a tune-up in the car that was very similar to my buddy's, and we tried it, and it didn't work. But
at least you got to say it.
Yeah, when we were, I don't know, we always have hopes and dreams when we go out to the shootout, and it's like we're cursed every time we go out there. Like we've found out things and we've made progress, but the car makes us work for it every time we're out there.
Man. That's it sounds like a common story for the shootout.
Yes, thankfully the weather's always been good, but there just seems to be a dark cloud over that weekend.
I think a lot of it has to do with people go there and they want to throw everything at their car.
Yes, and not to mention the whole, everything was in boxes 72 hours prior to the trip, and a lot of that goes to poor planning and oh, well, we're going to go out there and wing it.
I was just telling Kyle in the last episode, I mean, at least David pushed it back another month so we could all procrastinate a little bit longer.
Yeah, at least we won't sweat as much when we get out there.
So it already had a V8 in it. You could have, probably thrown another V8 and probably made a little more power than you make now. Why did you end up going with the 4G63?
So for going to the shootout for a couple of years before I decided to actually do the swap, I was always inspired by the quick 16 guys, the quick 32 guys, and the pro rear-wheel drive guys. And even before the pro rear-wheel drive at the shootout was a class, and it was just a couple guys that got together and said, hey, we want to play too. I wanted to do what they did, but I wanted to do it on a budget. And originally, the goal was 4G63 swap it and put it on the street.
Mm-hmm.
It just snowballed, and with some of the issues that I've had and the little hiccups here and there that I had with the car, I said, you know what, being street friendly is probably out of the question. And then once I put the fiberglass front clip on the car, that went totally out the window because I want just cutting out the rad support, the headlight buckets. That's all gone. So
you're committed now.
Yeah, it's beyond street car status. I mean, I guess I could make a headlight bucket work, and I could finish the exhaust, and I can make the wipers work again, but it's just not at that point. I would never really trust putting my wife and kids in this car to go get ice cream on a Friday night without, there's no heat, there's no AC, and I can't do that with a 7-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 3-month-old.
So you think if you could go back and start all over, you would do everything exactly how you have it now?
I'd probably make a few changes. God, that's a tough question to answer. I wish I could have sped up the build by about 2 years.
Yeah.
It took me a while to put the thing together and then sort out some bugs. I wouldn't trade the memories that I made along that road for anything, but I wish I could have gotten it done faster. Just because if I would have got it done 2 years sooner, who knows where I would have been with it right now. I mean, our other plans and dreams and ambitions, but I don't know if they'll come to fruition or not.
2 years of R&D that you kind of lost.
Yes. This car is kind of a test bed. I mean, you've seen it up close and personal, so you know how much weld and zip ties are used in some areas. This was kind of a way to see, hey, what could I get away with?
Right.
And this motor has let me get away with a lot. It should have melted down now on quite a few different occasions, and somehow it's still kicking.
What's crazy is I did an episode with Mike Gumbos a few weeks ago, and he was talking about how his build started out like that, and it just kind of snowballed from there, and now he's the number one Galant VR4 in the world.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And then JP, I don't want to butcher his last name, Riccio.
Yeah.
Just seeing what he got away with on his car with the fence post drive shaft and, the zip ties and extra hose clamps to keep the hoses from bursting and, things like that. It's just like, if he can do it, why can't I?
Right. Got to give it a shot.
Yeah, I owe a lot of that to sloppy mechanics too.
I think we all do. So what are your goals for this year with this car? What do you want to, get done by the end of the race season?
Now that I have the new torque converter in the car, and it is back together, I'm literally waiting on a grommet for the dipstick for the trans to stop leaking all over my garage floor right now. But I'm basically ready to go to the track, and that's like the first and foremost goal. Just get the time to get to the track. That's like the hardest hurdle for me to get to with everything going on in life. But ET-wise, mile an hour wise with the car, just want to try to get into the 115-ish mile an hour area. Right now we're at 111. And ET-wise with the Evo 3, we were 1197 or 1196. And I'm trying to get that down into a more consistent, reliable, like 1160, 1190 flat area.
Yeah. I will say, for the, high 11s, the 60 foots that you've been able to knock out has been pretty remarkable.
The best 60 foot to date with the car was a 166 or 167. And that was on that was a Friday night at the track right at the end of the year where, what was the track temp that night? Like 43 degrees. It was a brutally cold night to sit in the car in the staging lanes, and that was on pump gas. And it literally took me about 15 seconds to get the thing stalled up on the converter at full boost, which I left the line at like 26 pounds that night. The car felt awesome, but that was like the Hail Mary pass with the ultra tight converter that we struggled with for years now. And since that night, everything went downhill. Which made me start to believe that maybe I broke something in the converter because we were never able to get it to stall up after that, no matter what I changed. So this past winter, I finally sucked it up and bought a converter for the car, and testing in the garage so far has proven promising. So,
well, at least there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, hopefully.
I know when I was doing some research for this podcast, when I put all 980 cars from the list in order by 60 foot, I mean the cars all around you are like high nines, low tens. So, I mean, I think the car definitely has a lot left in it.
I hope so. With this new converter, I went with the Hughes. Talking to them about it, they seemed pretty hopeful with the converter that they were sending me that it was not going to sacrifice anything on the top end with giving me a whole lot more room down low to actually get this thing to leave right. So the 60 foot should improve, which I'm totally okay with. I would love to see a little bit of light underneath at least one front tire. That would just really, really have me tickled.
Right. That definitely put the motivation back in you.
Yes. I mean, a couple weeks ago, I went out for a medical procedure, so I had a few days home of recovery, and that's literally like where I just moped around in the garage and just tinkered with little things here and there. And I found motivation to get into the car since I wasn't at work all day long, and I tried to knock out as much as I could. So the motivation's there. I just got to get to the track next.
This episode of the MitsuTimes podcast is brought to you by Haltech. After 35 years in business, Haltech continues to be the industry leader in engine management and performance automotive electronics. Whether you're sliding sideways in a turbo drift car or pulling high gears in a 250 mile an hour Pro Mod, Haltech has you covered with their award-winning fuel and ignition control products. Their flagship Nexus R5 combines the functionality of a PDM, wideband controller, and engine management all in one state-of-the-art vehicle control unit. Powered by the user-friendly NSP software, Haltech gives you the ultimate control over your race car with Wi-Fi and built-in oscilloscope functionality. Haltech helps power the world's fastest 4G powered dragster, 4G all-wheel drive 5-speed, 4G all-wheel drive auto, and 4G front-wheel drive cars on the planet. Visit haltech.com for more information and find Haltech ECU on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Haltech can help you unlock the power. So do you have any long-term power or quarter-mile goals that you have set for this car?
The long-term goal is to just get kicked out of the track.
There you go.
There is no cage in this car. I refuse to cage it. Simply just, I don't want to cut it up any more than it already is. Why? Why does it matter to me? I don't know. But I don't want to do it anymore. I want to try to save it, with what it has left. But ultimately, an 1149 and just call it a day. And then if I can keep achieving that 1149, I want to be able to turn down the wick and just improve the efficiency on it at that point.
I think that's very attainable.
I hope. We're sitting at an 1196 now, and I've made a lot of changes at this point. So
yeah, I mean, just going from the Evo 3 to the 68 HTA, I mean, that's a bigger jump than people realize.
Yes, it's a whole lot of punch in a very, very small package.
Yeah.
Midway down the track, because of all the converter issues I've had, that turbo just really, really comes to life, and it just, even my buddy Roy, when he drove the car, he's just like, I don't get it. Like, this thing just, you get it in the second gear, and it punches you right in the mouth. And I said, yeah, we just need to get that to happen in the first gear, and we'll be set. And, he runs a very, very similar setup in his all-wheel drive Eclipse. I mean, he runs an HTA 68, E85, stock 6-bolt with a set of cams and a very simple, it's a very, very simple street car build. And me and him, we go back and forth all day long in a group chat with some friends over, bench racing type stuff. And he has the mile-an-hour record right now out of our little circle, and I have the ET record. So
there you go.
It's just something just to keep us motivated all winter long, and then springtime and summertime comes, and we're all busy doing other things. So we don't get to play too much, but when we do go out, we make it a party.
So, is there any events that you plan to attend in 2022? Somebody can come out and see this thing in action.
My home track is Island Dragway, and I basically just plan on hitting up a bunch of their test and tunes, whether it be on the off chance of a Friday night. More than likely it'll be Sundays. Unfortunately for the shootout this year, I don't know if I'm going to make it. It's since it's later on in the year, I have some other things going on. And with the price of fuel, I just don't know. The stars and planets have to align for me to get out to Ohio with the car. So basically, Island Dragway is probably going to be it for me.
Yeah, I think the price of fuel is going to keep a lot of people at home.
Unfortunately, and I hope that's not the case, because I wish the best for the shootout. That track has been so much fun for me since 2007. So
that was also my first shootout, 2007.
Yep, I've been going since then. I took off in 2010. It was the 1 year my dad literally passed away on my return trip on the 2009 shootout. Like, I got the phone call as I was getting on the highway that my dad passed. So 2010, I stayed home and with some friends, and literally the whole time that we were just like, man, we should have been in Ohio. Like, so every year after that, we've kind of made that pilgrimage as a way to remember my father, because he was a big time. So.
That's awesome. Is this your first Mitsubishi powered vehicle, or is there any that you want to talk about?
This whole thing came to be because, hold on, let me back that up. I've actually always been a fan of the Eclipse since I was a kid, because my older cousin had one, and he took me for a ride in it. It was non-turbo, automatic, 2-liter, nothing special, 1G. But I just thought it was the coolest looking car, and because I thought my cousin was the coolest cousin ever, I always liked it. So I've always had these cars in the back of my mind, and then when it came time, when I was in college, I just was talking to a friend, and I needed a car because my Suburban was broken down, and I wasn't putting the money into it anymore, and he's like, well, I got this 92 Eagle Talon. And I was like, oh, yeah? Tell me more. And he's like, it's a front-wheel drive turbo 5-speed. I said, yeah, how much you want for it? And since 2006, it's been downhill. I had that car for a number of years. I bought it with 157,000 miles on it.
Wow.
And it sold it with 225,000 miles on it.
Man. And you drove it to the shootout every year?
Yes. I took that to the shootout a couple times. That went out in 2007, 8, 9. And then I sold it because I finally bought an all-wheel drive, and that was a 90 TSI 5-speed. And then had that out in 2000. I took that out to Ohio. Oh, God, what was that? 2011, 12, 13, and 14. And I think 2015 that may have went out there.
Do you drive the Vegabishi out there, or are you trailer?
Oh, no. This thing's a trailer queen.
Okay. I was, when you started talking about it, I was like, oh my God, does he drive that car all the way over there?
Oh, no. The inspection sticker in the window has expired since 2005.
Awesome.
And let's see. The back of it's all faded out. PA state inspections on the back of them. It has like the mileage that it was inspected at and the VIN number and what wheel was pulled and all that. And I want to say the Vega, just for conversation's sake, I think had like 94, 95,000 original miles on it. Like it at one point it was driven a lot. When I first got out of, or when I first got my license, I drove this thing everywhere. I loved it. It was just different. Like everybody looked at it weird. It was cool. It was fun, but it was expensive to drive because at that point it had the 413 small block in it, and being in high school trying to afford premium, that just wasn't happening.
Right. Plus, you keep your foot on the loud pedal. Cars like that.
Yes, I drove past a lot of friends' houses after I got my license and did a whole lot of fucking burnouts. To the point where they heard me coming and they knew it was me. They didn't even go outside anymore to cheer me on. They're just like, "Oh yeah, okay, Casey's here."
Yeah.
Like
he's passing by.
Yeah, there was a few of us in high school that we all did a lot of dumb things like that in front of each other's houses. But
beautiful. That's the kind of friends I grew up with.
We had a lot of great times with this car, and even some of my friends with their projects. Like it was just like a thing. We all got together. We cruised around. It's what we did.
Right. And now even going to the shootout, I mean, that's like kind of like a family reunion every year.
Yes. We like I said earlier, the group chat that I have with some of my friends, it's literally like the one thing that we talk about at least once a month. And we have a meeting point. We all get on the highway together. We cruise out together. If the cars are broken down, we all cram into a car and drive out there to, just pass the time. We've driven out there with walkie-talkies a couple of years ago in between the vehicles. And we did a lot of stupid stuff with the walkie-talkies.
Yeah.
It never got a speeding ticket. We've always had radar detectors.
Every time I would see you ripping around on that little pit bike last year at the shootout, I'm like, man, I'm surprised they don't say something to him. He is flying through here.
Well, sometimes that was me on the pit bike, and sometimes that was my buddy Roy. This last year at the shootout, we started having some issues with the car with getting it up on the converter, and with us throwing the kitchen sink thing, I wound up having an MSD box with me, and I was like, well, let's put the MSD box in. And naturally, I couldn't find a wiring diagram for it, so I'm driving around pit spot to pit spot, talking to everybody and anybody that I knew had a fast car or may have dabbled one, or they were friends on Facebook that I've spoken to on Facebook, but they've never
Never met in real life.
They never met me in person. So I'm just walking up to them like, oh, hey, it's so and so. How are you today? Can you help me with this? And they're just like, who are you again? And I said, I have the Vega. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, you.
I will say, when it came to getting the wiring diagram information, Kevin Jewer was the one that hooked me up. He's like, oh, yeah, I got the printout on my laptop. Here you go.
That dude is the man.
Yes. He was the one who helped me out with a converter on the thing, or one of the many people, I should say, that have helped me out with pointing me in a direction with a converter. And so far, so good in the driveway and in the garage. We just got to see what it's going to do with the track.
Yeah. I was going to say, I wonder if Darren Thomas would have some input on which direction you should go. But, I mean, it sounds like you got plenty of people helping you out.
Oh, there's 100 different people in my corner. Facebook has been a blessing and a curse. But no, I've gotten a lot of help from a ton of very, very knowledgeable and helpful people.
Yeah.
Sometimes they told me things that I didn't want to hear, but I needed to hear, and we've all managed to laugh about it at the end of the night. So
that's what really matters.
Yes, no, I've had endless amounts of help.
So, Casey, is there anybody that you want to give a shout out to for getting the Vegabishi together and getting it to where it is now?
Well, usually everybody saves their significant other for last, but I do want to say my significant other first. Sarah, I love you. Thank you, because you yell at me to finish this car and get it out and work on it instead of telling me I have to do other things. She definitely pushes this project along, because otherwise it wouldn't be doing anything. I lose motivation pretty easily. But besides my wife, my buddy Roy, Alex, Justin, Aaron, and of course Kurt Stewart from White Shed Speed, Robert Young, Force Performance, my buddy Chuck Exton with Exton Auto Machine, does some projects for me and helps me out here and there when I break bolts off and things that I shouldn't be breaking. God, there's a ton of people. Rob Fake from Force Induction Guys, Norbert Madrigal from DSM Part Out, John and Nathan from Performance Part Out, Andy Parambo from DSM Alley. The community has literally built this car. With my budget that I had to work on it, I said, I want to build this thing as cheap as I can. I only want to use used parts, and I'm going to source them from the community. So there's dozens of more names from people that I've got parts from. The motor came from Carl Rio. Andrew Godey hooked me up with the original ECU and wiring harness. It's endless, the amount of community members that have sold stuff to me dirt cheap, or said, you know what, I'm throwing this thing away, just come get it out of my sight. It's been amazing, this road that I've been on with this car.
That's awesome. And
hopefully, if all the R&D and everything pays off on this, the version 2.0 actually not be a Vega, but hopefully a Chevette.
There you go. I like that. Are you going to get more serious with the next one?
If the way that would happen is if this car either rots away, gets into an accident, a tree falls on it, the garage burns down, something catastrophic would have to happen to this chassis, but then I will be trying to find something that has age in it to some degree, so that way I could go faster than 1150s, but it will be something semi-serious.
Awesome. Well, Casey, I appreciate you coming on, and I rock your Piro Fab sticker everywhere I go in my daily driver wagon. So I appreciate that.
I appreciate that too.
All right, take it easy.
All right, catch you later.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.